Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Okay, let's start with the nation. This cup keeps me warm. Government spent 1.8 trillion on food import during border closure. INEC fixes November 6 for Anambra election. Go for COVID test if you have malaria, says Sanwo-Olu. If you have malaria symptoms, says Sanwo-Olu. Order on headers to vacate forest. Presidency cautions Akeredolu. Amoteco recovers 8 sacks of weapons from bandits. 160.2 million seems yet to be linked with NIN. And Oyo to pay Osun 8 billion naira on Lautech. Okay, which story are we taking?
Major headline.
Major headline, yes, go ahead.
So according to our special advisor to the president, Dr. Doyin Salam, is the chairman of the Presidential Economic Advisory Council. He was saying that we lost 1.85 trillion during the border closure to food imports. You know, admitting and, you know, supporting the argument of those who were against it that we were not food sufficient at the time we shut the border. Even though we thought we were not food sufficient, I thought that he was to encourage local production of food products, but he admitted that all the while when we thought they were making an attempt at a successful or supposedly successful, you know,
but even though it actually increased production, it did not meet our demand.
We lost trillions of naira, and it's sad to know.
So I was wondering where these imports came from, maybe from the others or other maybe seaports.
Through our seaports, you know, we had to supplement.
So Amoteco quickly. So Oyo State Security Network, codenamed Amoteco, yesterday said they were in possession of sacks of amulets, 8 sacks of amulets, charms, and other weapons that they seized from the bandits and kidnappers. They say a lot of foreigners are coming in through the forest and then attacking farmers, and they were able to, you know, arrest most of them because they got support from the hunters. And these hunters actually use charms. They know the terrain very well, and they were able to help Amoteco fish them out. So they are talking about collaboration. They are going to be collaborating with these hunters that really know the terrain so that they can help in a
related story, Governor Akeredolu is has made an executive order saying that all headers who are not registered should vacate the forests. Okay. Now, I think some northern elders or the presidency are saying that he doesn't have the right to unilaterally
take that decision, but he's insisting that it's not going back, that the forest reserve within, I think security should not be exclusive to the federal government. And locally, he should deal with security in the state. These are some of the criticisms we've given some of the northern governors. He's doing what he has to do within his state. He needs a register of those, you know, openly grazing in the state. If there's insecurity, he needs to have
those
data.
Who are legally should actually register.
He's requesting that data, that if you're legally open grazing in the state, get data. You know, get registered. So he has data somewhere to track, trace someone, and you know, so that
media again should be very careful to how to couch this story.
So the presidency querying that effort that he made yesterday is something that I find funny. Yes, I think they should collaborate with him and assist him as much as possible. He reached that decision at a meeting with the Fulani communities, the Ebira communities in the state. He didn't take the decision. He was trying to solve a problem within the state.
So
we want to assume the presidency didn't understand what he meant.
Okay, let's move on to the punch. INEC planning to make NIN compulsory for voter registration. Government kidnapped Lagos Varsity Deputy VC in Nasarawa and demand 20 million naira. Oyo to pay Osun 8 billion for Lautech asset sharing agreements. Southwest farmers seek FG's intervention to save 10 million jobs. And this picture story in the punch. Abiodun bans trucks from Ogun flyovers as 3 die in tanker explosion.
Yes, so in response, that picture story, in response to the tanker explosion that happened in Abeokuta, the governor responded by banning movement of trucks in his state. This happened early in the morning yesterday at Kuto, Abeokuta, Ogun State. Inward Kuto, Abeokuta, Ogun State.
He didn't ban them. He just said they can't go on the flyovers.
No, he banned them going on the flyovers within Abeokuta in response to that fire, tanker fire.
Because what happened with the tanker?
It's just one measure.
What happened with the tanker was I think it lost a valve in one of the compartments. So while he was coming there, he was trying to alert them that his brake had a brake failure. But they didn't. So he was going down the hill, down the flyover, and of course he ramped into. He tried to swerve over to reduce the loss of lives, But unfortunately, he rammed into a few cars.
And a lot of lives were lost.
3 people died.
Wow. These inflammables moving on our roads, this is usually some of the risks that we take to put them on the road.
There's a story about the VC.
Yeah, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Anchor University, Lagos State. This is, I think, is a Deeper Life Christian Ministry University. Yeah. Yes. So he traveled to the north. His kids were in the north, so he went to visit them in school. And on his way back to Lagos, he was attacked by bandits. They started chasing. His driver was running, and then there was another roadblock. Other bandits, I think they were working together, and then they stopped him. They shot into the air. He was taken, and they are requesting for 20 million naira. Right now, they are having talks with the Deeper Life heads or leaders to pay that amount of money. I just hope the police
I really hope, because he was dropping his kids off at school. Yeah. I mean, one in university and one in secondary school. Really sad indeed. Moving on now to Daily Sun. COVID-19 vaccines meant to kill us, says COVID governor. Why we opened schools despite coronavirus spike, says Sanwo-Olu. U.S. new era as Biden resumes office today. NIN SIM registration continues till February 9, says NCC. INEC fixes Anambra global elections for November 6th. Okay, Kogi.
Governor Yahaya Bello, did a video that went viral, and he was saying he was doubting the authenticity of the COVID-19 vaccine, saying that these vaccines are actually meant to kill us. We've had HIV, we've had cancer, we have several other diseases, yet we did not find a vaccine for it. How come under 1 year we are already having a vaccine for COVID-19? That he's not telling anybody not to take, but if you want to take, open your eyes. But on the other hand,
in addition to what he said, he also said that he was reminding Nigerians of Pfizer. You remember we had a history of Pfizer when they came to Kano State, and they injected many of our children that died.
And they got away
so he says, why would you trust Pfizer again when they are bringing these their vaccines? That he doesn't believe that they are coming to kill us, that we should not take the vaccine. Wow. You're saying on the other hand?
Yes, I wanted to say that they've gotten a storage facility, ultra cold chain, that will be taking about 2,100 of the vaccine. So of 2,000, I think, liters. But now the vaccines we're expecting will take only 500 of the space. Right. So we have space for more other vaccines. And it's costing us a lot of money, really.
Any other story?
We'll take it next paper.
All right. Moving on to the Nigerian Tribune, COVID-19, Lagos oxygen demand rises to 360 cylinders per day. 7-day ultimatum, continue your dialogue with Fulani communities. Presidency tells Akeredolu. Senate won't fight Buhari to please anyone, says Lawan. 3 dead, 5 vehicles burnt as tanker explodes in Abeokuta. Pope appoints Kuka as member dicastery for the promotion of human integral development. Right.
I was hoping that we'll get to the NIN story, the NIS story.
Go ahead.
Maybe it's in the
we talked about it several times.
The Minister for Communication was addressing the fact I took yesterday about people selling their NIN, saying that Nigerians should desist from such, or you even giving out their NIN numbers to others because of the risk of it. And he also talked about an extension of the registration now to February 9.
Which we've been asking for.
In response to, yes, just as we talked about yesterday.
But they said it in the beginning now. They extended in the beginning. Okay, I want to take the Lagos State. So Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has said that due to the rise in COVID-19 positive cases, there's a huge demand of oxygen. And right now, in their Lagos State isolation centers, they've been giving like 70-liter cylinder oxygen. Now it's increased to 360. And before the end of the month, it will likely get to 750 cylinder. And he's asking that we should take precautions. If peradventure you think you have malaria, even if you are showing the symptoms of malaria, do not take it as malaria. Make sure you test to confirm it's not COVID-19. They've also set up oxygen centers. They call them, I think, oxygen
plants.
Yes. So about 10 of them in the local governments. They've inaugurated 5.
Oh, fantastic.
In 4 weeks, they will inaugurate the other 5. So people can get those.
Interestingly,
oxygen.
when Adedoja Salam, that's our correspondent in TVC, did the documentary to cover the IDH, she did report that they were using 300 cylinders per day.
Wow.
So obviously there's been an increase.
Yes.
So for him to say now they were using about 370.
360.
So it's a sad story that we don't have enough oxygen. I mean, somebody came to my church on Sunday and said, listen, I'm a doctor, I work in IDH. There is no oxygen.
Wow.
We can't. We are trying to meet the demand. So please stay safe. That's pretty much the message. We don't have enough to take care of Nigerians. Nigerians, please stay safe. I mean, there's no stronger message than that to anybody.
Honestly.
Okay, final paper, Vanguard, Presidency Akinsanyan at war. They are not at war. Please. FG warns against giving NIN to others for registration. Insecurity, Senate won't fight Buhari to please anybody. North can't recover from insecurity in 100 years. And Governor Bello rejects COVID-19 vaccine, says it's meant to kill. Okay.
The North?
Yes, go ahead, please.
The Northern elders are saying that the North, with what is happening right now, the North cannot recover in 100 years as a result of insecurity. I think about 4 persons were killed. A vice chancellor was kidnapped recently. And they are asking the president again to sack the service chiefs, to change hands, since the people there are bereft of ideas. They are no longer working. And they are reminding him that they support him. And if he doesn't listen to them, they are likely not going to give him his support that he wants his successor to take over after he's left presidency, and they will rather get support from other parts of the country because the president is not listening to them. So that was basically what they were saying.
The fact that they might not recover is a factor, because the level of destruction happening is worrisome.
So, Kuka gets an appointment at the Vatican. Sometimes you always wonder, when we see all these pronouncements by all these people, you just wonder, why are they talking? Why are they talking? And suddenly they get promotion. You
are not suspecting.
Maybe this is all about promotion. I'm just saying, you see, this life, one thing I have learned in my work that I do is that for every stakeholder, they are motivated by something.
There's always a personal interest.
There's a reason. There's something. Find that reason.
So be careful.
I'm not saying that's what I'm not saying that's why. I'm just saying
generally.
Yakule that because that kind of thing. So 1 second, so I'm not saying I'm not alleging it. I'm just saying it's just okay.
That's a bit of suspicion.
Let's go on a break. And we come back. It's Wednesday. We're going to discuss what the governor of Lagos State said. You know, it's fairly scary. You know, he said 24,000 pupils refused to return to school after the very first lockdown. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu said that 24,000 children were yet to resume in the state after the first lockdown imposed to prevent the spread of coronavirus. According to him, after the first lockdown, they were still waiting for these children to return. So, there is a challenge if you keep schools locked down for so long. Now, we're going to talk to a few leaders to see what their thoughts are, but I'd like to even hear Nigerians' views on this. You can send us your tweets on TVC Connect. You can hashtag your TVC so we can read your tweets. And you can also reach us on Facebook, TVC Connect. We'd like to hear your thoughts on this because, yes, we all wanted, there were issues of, there were arguments of should school resume or should school not resume. But Lagos State that actually has the main capacity of children of poor families, we're saying that many of them were sent out to do menial works. The parents felt that, listen, school has closed. Yeah, go and start hawking banana, go and start hawking eggs, you know. So in that situation, that is a situation where the state government cannot sit down and let children who are supposed to be in school stay home for so long. I mean, I also have data that some kids even came back pregnant. Some children, some people came back pregnant. You know, because they're idle, they are home for so long. So there's a lot the state is going through. But now, the question therefore is that, does that then justify the resumption? Because people are still saying the numbers of COVID cases is increasing. How do we as a people adjust to this reality?
So I would say that we haven't really seen the statistics that it's because there's school resumption, that's why the cases are rising, because it's not just the schools that have resumed. We've been coming to work. We've had organizations resume, churches have resumed, you know, businesses have opened up. So the economy is gradually opening up. And right now, because of the fact that we are naturally lagging behind in the scheme of things when it comes to education, it's not a time for us to allow our children stay back at home. They are going to lose a lot. The learning gap, I don't even know how long it's going to take us to come out of it. But that's not all the reason why we have students not returning back to school. Let's not forget that when COVID came, it came with economic harsh realities, like people lost their jobs, people who were managing on a normal day. We still have people who are complaining that salaries haven't been paid. Now, the schools tried to do that online thing with not collecting so much, but right now, most of them have increased because they couldn't even cope, they couldn't pay their teachers. Now, the harsh economic realities will not allow most low-income parents, so to speak, to send their children back to school. Remember that education is not free. Even the public schools, they tell you it's free, they still pay something. So it's not very easy for them to, muster the money. They are still struggling to feed and survive and take care of themselves to send those children to school. That's one. Also, I just realized that a lot of parents do not trust the government. They don't trust that the government can take care of these children in schools. We've gone around to see that some schools are not even equipped for, with obeying this COVID-19 protocol. So some parents are skeptical. Well, instead of my child to go to school and die, why don't I just keep this child at home? I think it's some of the reasons why we're not seeing students return to school like we expect them to.
What are your thoughts on this?
I think, because I read something online, let me just read it. Global Citizens, they're saying since the onset of COVID-19, millions of children in Nigeria have been stuck at home and they are not learning. And for vulnerable and disadvantaged children, the impact is even worse. There's now a risk that millions of children forced out of school by the pandemic won't ever return to school.
Oh my God.
Globally, according to the Save the Children, education cuts and rising poverty as a result of COVID-19 could force almost 10 million children out of school forever by the end of the year alone. So I think it's a valid basis. What I know locally, where we live is not posh. Children did not go to school truly, but they went to skills. So most children used to actually have to combine skill with schooling. Most of the kids in my own neighborhood, in the public schools, when they're done schooling in the afternoon, they resume at their skill acquisition places. So the one in furniture resumes there. So during the lockdown, what actually happened was that they resumed full-time in their skill acquisition. So nobody was really locked up at home, staying away, because Oga always had jobs to do. I really think
that... But the parents now are so drawn to the amount, the revenue that they've garnered during that period, because they don't even send them back to school, because now they feel that you are more useful.
It's not even that you are not available. So there's available hands, more hands for maybe if you had a family business. If your family ran a business and you were assisting your parents with, you were more available. So, parents at some point got selfish. I even felt I got selfish. Personally, I didn't have to worry about my kids traveling to school anymore, even though they were not acquiring a skill. But the truth is, if a child was to learn a particular skill for 6 years and he was schooling along with it, it will last him at least 12 years or 8 years before he will finish. But because the lockdown happened, they moved faster and parents started to weigh options. So these figures that we're seeing and the data that the Lagos State is putting out is true. It's difficult for me to admit.
I know that the Lagos State, Lagos State Subeb actually launched Project Zero campaign, and the objective was to give these children free notebooks, free school bags, free school shoes, everything. Make it so just come back. So the campaign was like, go into the communities. They have their social mobilization officers going into the various communities, asking, where are your children? If you're not, just take school back, take everything, just start school. Even giving them free uniforms and everything. The idea, they got private sectors to support them, but the idea is that, what are we as a people doing to ensure? I mean, you said something before on how you homeschooled your child for a while. In this kind of situation where some parents are actually scared, and I'm talking about low income now.
Yeah, low income.
Close your mind to privates.
Yeah.
Low income. How does a low income family help that child at home where they are genuinely scared of the pandemic? Maybe they have sick family members at home. They don't want this child to go to school. How does somebody like that, who might be just listening to your view today, how does that person help the child at home?
Well, the reality in where we live is they will put their child to skill. If the mother was a skilled business person, maybe a hairdresser or something, or the father was a carpenter, the child will have to learn the trade of the family. There's no alternative, because the things that me and you use, me particularly, all the online things I use, it's not at their disposal. And even though Lagos State did, the online radio learning, the online, all the methods, I followed the radio classes.
Yes.
I followed all of them. I tried to find more alternatives for myself. And I can only imagine, for some people, the radio as cheap as it was an expensive commodity. And there was also the problem because in September when they were resuming, some people usually have to stand as their guardian so that they can have tax card to resume in the Lagos State. You know the requirements to join Lagos State public schools is not so chicken
easy,
change.
yeah.
You need to get your tax card. Most of these people are artisans. They could not find their tax, evidence of their tax payments, even though they pay through their artisan association. I talked to most of them. They could not. The mechanic that I had to stand for his child, they required all of those things, and those things discourage some people from trying to put their children in school. I think they should look into the methods of registration.
I think that education is very, very important. No matter how we look at our conditions to say it's not necessary at this time, no matter the skills you learn, you need a form of basic education so that you can do well. It's like comparing a tailor, a local tailor, and a fashion designer. The difference is literacy. So it's very important that we encourage our children to go back to school. I would want the government to do more. You know, like how they were begging children back in the days to go to school with promises of lunch, sweets, biscuits, just to send your children, make the children happy. This is the time that the government needs to deploy that. And all those hidden fees that, they tell us is free education, but then you go there, you buy broom, you buy this, you buy all those things. And by the time you calculate the money, I had a friend who sent off the child to secondary school. By the time she calculated everything she needed, it was 90,000 naira, and it was supposed to be free education. All those things, you look at it and you eliminate them. The government can even appeal to the private sector to support. See, the truth is, if we are successful on our own and our neighbor is not, we are all not successful.
You raised something that is very critical that you might not even know how important it is, because education actually is supposed to be free. But the little levies we're asking is not actually from the government. Sometimes they're from all the various maybe teachers are saying, go and bring this, bring 100 naira, bring 200 naira. It's the schools, and we found that independently that some of these schools are the ones independently charging these children.
It's unfair.
When the government itself said, this thing are available
it's not
for
even
free.
about money all the time. But what I was talking about, the person who is in charge of registration, they gave you a photocopy of a tax card, and the person attached a letter to it, introducing themselves as the guardian of the child. But you're insisting they go and produce the person's tax card and their bank details, making it more cumbersome. That's my experience. Making it more cumbersome. I have to stand for 2 children. One is going into SS1, the other one is going into JS1. That was how it happened. So these things are not usually money. Maybe when you make it more cumbersome, parents will now try to offer you something. Maybe that's the back door.
Let me go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. And I hear Tokwa is in the building. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So, joining us now is Tope Mark Odege. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good to have you on the show. So, we're still having this conversation on the fact that the governor has declared one of the reasons why they are having to open schools. 24,000 of these are our pupils refuse to return. Obviously, for many of them started doing menial jobs, or their parents used them for various things in the houses. And because if you remember, many of these international organizations and even local organizations did a lot of work to bring poor children into schools. A lot of NGOs did a lot of leg work trying to encourage children to be in school and give them all the reasons. And COVID-19 came, and many now had perfect reasons to have their children stay at home. So the question, therefore, is, we have this lacuna, obviously, in the educational sector. How do we ensure that even those who are not yet back in school can make best use of the time there? Because you are saying about menial jobs. Maybe we should now make that
part of the curriculum.
Part of the curriculum. Well, okay, is it carpentry work? Is it mechanic work? Do it and do it well.
And find a way to infuse education
at some point
inside.
But
so that
we've
you're
done
able
that.
to read and write and understand the basics of the skill.
We've done that successfully.
Let me hear your thoughts on this one.
24,000 is a huge number. We already have one of the highest in terms of out-of-school children, so that already puts us at a disadvantage. There has to be deliberate policy. The government has to have deliberate policy to encourage children being in school and discourage parents from taking children out of school. So for me, at this state, many parents, we're talking about those that have menial jobs, many parents are out of work. There's a cleaner that is literally begging me. She has 3 children. Her husband lost his job during the pandemic last year. She became a cleaner. She was a full-time housewife before, just to try and make ends meet. Those kids can't go to school, obviously. The hustle now is not for them to even get work. It's for her to have something for them to eat. So we are dealing with people that the basics of livelihood isn't covered. So some people even have work. Their carpentry work is still going on. Some people's jobs have been taken out during the COVID season, so they don't have work. So the opportunity is looking at the child like, you want to go and work, better go and beg. That's the real catchment area. The people whose children have become beggars, and begging has proven to be more profitable for the family than them going to school or any other thing. So the government it's a carrot and stick approach. You must offer carrots, give them incentives for being in school, give them school uniform, give them foods. Then the stick approach, punish parents whose children are not in school because you have the database of all these children. We need to get the children back in school because they are the ones that will become terrorize the society later if they are not well groomed.
Let's talk about the policies government has put in place that are continuing so that parents know. One of the things, like for the woman you mentioned, is a school feeding program. So when it was started in Osun State, one of the objectives was, if your struggle is to feed your child, you can guarantee your child a meal in school. And most parents put their kids in school, and it's continuing. Even in Lagos, they started it already. We also try to, government policies that I know successfully has worked is combining skill acquisition in technical schools. So this technical school at Abule Ado, I know, every kid there learn a bit of sciences and the technicalities of electricity and all of that in those schools. So you don't have to leave your child. So you do your basic education as well as acquire a skill. And their graduates are, they're the casual workers with the discos that I know of. So there are some policies that are working. Maybe parents should try as much as possible to open their minds to opportunities rather than close it up and say, I have a hardship and I'd rather leave my child. It is not going to be for any parent's gain to see your child sitting down. Even if your child was not in school. I remember mothers those days while I was growing up would drag that child to a small teacher and offer that teacher, I will pay you 100 naira.
These are different times.
Take care of the child.
I mean, I was driving around yesterday and I saw these people, their masks were underneath their chin, and they're talking to the Marwa driver. Hey, having a conversation. The Marwa driver had no mask on. So these kids are just on the roads. And are we putting them at risk? Are we putting their families at risk? So is that...
the 24,000 people that are not in school is not because of COVID.
Not be mask.
It's not because of mask. I think that the
24,000 people, according to the governor, was after the first lockdown. They did not return.
So it's not based on, that's what I'm saying, it's not based on the awareness or presence of mask or fear of COVID. It's not about fear of COVID. It's about resources. So another thing that the government can do is to, because when we attack what we don't know, we will be trying to, if it's a rat and you are trying to use sledgehammer to kill a rat, you would end up breaking your house to kill cockroach with sledgehammer. We need to, as a government, find out what the core reason, even if it is to sample 5,000 of those that did not go back to school. Why are they not back in school? If you can do 5,000, you can use that to approximate what is the reason for 24,000, and then you can direct a specific solution to help them get back into school. The average low-level Nigeria doesn't believe there's COVID affecting them.
The problems are not new. When we talked earlier, we talked about where the parents having alternatives and the alternatives working for them. You came and you talked about now the difficulty parents, maybe to give your child transport fare to the school was possible before, it's no longer possible. So those are some of the problems. They are not new. If, per local government, I know in Suru Alaba that the honorable member representing Suru Alaba has a boss that goes around. I'm waiting to see the one for Amu Odofi going around within those interior in Satellite Town and picking up children heading to Satellite Town Secondary School for free. But I've seen the one in Suru Alaba and I see that it works. So those parents don't worry. They just see that Molue bus, the Molue one, come around and everybody just send their children off to school. So if our concern now is to address COVID, we will now be looking at spacing those children in the bus, doing a 2-time round.
I think we know the reason why these children are not back to school. Their parents cannot afford it. So while we claim we have free education, the government needs to look into that free. How free is that free education? They do not have the resources. Now, because of the COVID-19, some of those protocols of adhering to the protocols of COVID-19 in the schools, for those public schools, we've heard that some schools don't even have water
They don't.
Their spacing is still not okay. And most, let me even come down to primary schools. We have about 100 and something in one class. And even if you decide to space
not
them,
anymore.
A few people come to school each day. The parents who cannot afford to pay the fees, who cannot afford to eat, would they be able to buy the face mask? So we have, the issues are what government needs to look into and find ways to help. They may not be able, because they are looking for money to buy vaccines right now. So they may not even have the money to handle this. But they can now start looking for, there are private individuals I know, there are NGOs I know that will still come in and support. So the problem is money.
Well, the information I have is that they are doing things to get the kids back to school. They are giving out school uniforms, like I said earlier. They're giving out free school. But even they're not, as I said, education is supposed to be free. The school uniform, they're not supposed to sell to you. I'm here. Somebody was telling me now that he knows somebody that was charged at the last term. They charge them school badge, 150 naira, school tape, 150 naira, tie, 400 naira, beret. Now, these are things that you should go and get. You actually go and get to yourself. We're not supposed to sell. They give you the material. You go and do a source for it, however you want to source for it. But the point I want to make is that we are all saying resume. Some kids came back, as I said earlier, pregnant. There are so many other factors that are stopping children from coming back to school. Now, there's still COVID. How do we ensure those who are staying back home, for whatever reason, maybe not because of COVID, but whatever reason their parents are insisting, how do we ensure that they are actually making the best use of that time? So are we going to make them officially formalize the carpentry work they are doing, the hawking they are doing? Are we going to, how do we ensure?
We cannot allow hawking.
We can't allow hawking. Hawking obviously is illegal for
Mariah, I don't know.
But my point is that how do we make these children still, in whatever means they are in right now, make the best use of it and do not affect them in future? We'll talk about that after the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So the question is not that how do we maximize what they're doing in their house? No, that should not be. That's the wrong question. The question is, for those 24,000 that are at home, what should government do to bring them back to school in spite of COVID? That's the real question. I
think the government should come up with more incentives to attract them back into schools. They should look into the school feeding program if there's any way it can resume, because I think they've stopped because of the COVID-19. They should look into a transport system. I know that the public schools do not have a transport system. They should look into that. They need to partner with private citizens who are willing to help. They can go and start asking questions for people to come and donate, so that a school that a parent that knows that the child will be taken to school, at least that child will have one-day meal, will be rest assured that the child is taken care of, and then face other things. So I think more incentives. If they need ideas from people, they should tell us. We can come up with more ideas on how this can work.
Okay. We've been able to agree that one of the major problem was, transportation to school, and I mentioned that some of their constituency representatives were able to provide transportation for them. But government should now look into areas. I'm sure that they have data on the schools that they have these missing students, and look at the peculiarity of their locality. Most of them will be the increment in transportation. Prior to this, for my area now, then we don't even have public buses like that. It was Okada, and an Okada could take you to school maybe 200 naira. But now it will cost the parent 400 naira. And if the resources of the parents did not increase, of course, that transportation will have to suffer. If the parents is not willing to sacrifice some form of comfort for that to cover, it will affect it. So the government should look into those peculiarities and their problems locally and find local solutions to those problems. If you require that you provide the free buses, you can hire the buses that apply, or the keke napep that apply, or allow the okadas that apply at an affordable rate for children only, and allow children get that access to school.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so we've addressed government. Just one quick one in addition to that: BRT buses, all public transport buses should be allowed to carry children, at least for standing free. That would also ease the things. But I feel, after talking to government, let's talk to ourselves. I want to say that every individual should take ownership of every child you see around outside school in your environment. Ask, why are you not in school? What are you doing at home? Which school are you going to? Has your school not resumed? If everybody takes that consciousness and we start asking around with every child we see, we will begin to waken that urge to go to school. Don't you know school is good for you? If everybody today tells every child school is good for you, get back to school. Every everything will change to a large extent because our minds will start thinking of how to find our way back into school, and that will help the government at the same time.
And help our future.
Up, let's get a few tweets for you.
So Billy Keys Mafe says, you couldn't be more correct on this, Obiajula. I know this for a fact because there's been fee increments in some schools as school owners struggle to meet structural requirements to prevent infection spread. It's truly tough and there are no incentives for them. Lydia Real says, at Federal Capital Territory yesterday, I went for a niece's registration to GSS1. I was mute with the fee, including cutlass and buckets compulsory. Totally, I paid 140,000 just for small class. When I asked the principal, he said, you believe in COVID, Abi? I'm lucky this school is even the least among other schools.
Okay, so let me quickly just talk about the registration difficulty. Lagos, again, is a case in study. You know, I don't know why the principals per school insist that you can allow inter-class transfers. So we know COVID has come and our resources are lean. Parents would want to take their kids out of private schools, kids who have been in private schools, and transfer them to public schools that they can afford. And if you now say that a child between SS2 cannot do transfer, or a child in JS2 cannot be transferred from a private school to public school, create such difficulty for a parent at this time should be looked into by the government. It is an existing problem. I can hit my chest and present the child I try to do it for and bring that child as evidence. I know what I am saying. You should not allow those, it says that they must come in at JS1, or even SS1 transfer is difficult if they did not take the junior YF in the public
That's
schools.
a different issue.
No, if we're talking about the number of kids not in school, we should also look at the number of kids trying to leave their comfort of private schools, the cost of it, into public schools to afford education.
Yeah, the point is, I know that government is also dealing with overcrowded classrooms. In one class in secondary school, they're having over 100 students. So there are many factors. It's not that government just saying, no, you cannot transfer. There are other factors that are being looked into. So we have to consider all those things. But the point is that I want to take a few tweets. Are you taking a few tweets?
Okay.
So
Auntie Annie tweeted, Nicola Pokusi says, have you thought that parents don't want to send their children to school for fear of COVID? Do you realize the magnitude of the pandemic? Okay, so
let me quickly say that let's also not forget the teachers. Now, I know that some schools, some primary schools, the students there or the pupils there are not really excited going to school because of the frustrations that these teachers put on top of them. They do not have the incentive. The teachers are not giving incentives. A lot of them are being owed salaries. So if we want to attract these children back to school, we need to sort out the teachers. The teachers need to be happy to be able to give them that education.
Says most of these children are not medically fit to attend school. They need to be healthy in order to gain education. That's an angle I didn't look at all. You know?
Unfortunately, that's all we can take on this segment. We only hope that these peoples are somehow able to come back to school. And as I said earlier, that various state governments must do what they can to encourage these peoples back. Because, I mean, it's number 3 on the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's important that education is not taken with levity. Parents and communities must take responsibility to make sure every child, especially underage children, should be in school. Let's go on the break. When we come back, the biggest news of the day, I think, the U.S. inauguration is today. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So, everybody's talking about the fact that Joe Biden will be formally sworn in as the 46th president of the United States of America. So, on this segment, we'll be speaking with Adeyemi Akinsanyan, who is Akinsanyan. He's on the legacy of the outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump and the inauguration of Joe Biden as president. Good morning, Mr. Akinsanyan. Are you there? Hello?
Good morning, I'm right there. I'm right there.
Good to have you. I can't see you, but I'm assuming that you're there. So, tell us, I mean, in your view, I mean, everybody's talking about the inauguration today. There's been lots of issues of insecurity, especially the fact that during the debate on how to, I think it was last Wednesday or two Wednesdays ago, we had issues at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And right now, the National Guard have been, the insurrection, thank you, Tokwe, for reminding me. So right now, we have the National Guard, for the past few days, they've been cordoning it off and putting perimeter fencing, and just to ensure the inauguration is quite secure. Could you give us your own assessment of the entire inauguration and what America has become to the world at this time?
First of all, I'd like to say, well, thank you very much for letting me speak on this program. The things that happen in America are important to us in Nigeria, not just because America is the great country or the large or the powerful country that it is, but increasingly these days, many of us have children and family. There is hardly a home in Lagos and many parts of upper Nigeria that cannot count a father, a mother, a wife, a husband, a child, and so on and so forth, who is in America. So the things that happen in America are of very great significance to us. But the events of the past few days have showed us a few things about the inauguration. It has come at a time when certain things have happened that did not come to the fore before. One of them is that more than ever before, the country and the world is conscious that some of the things that we had assumed had been papered over, had been passed in the history of America, have actually just been like a festering wound that had been kept under a bandage but was not healing. And so that we realize that a lot of the issues around race and racial inequality, white nationalism, white supremacy, any of those things, domestic terrorism to support that white nationalism. These are things which I'm sure even the United States felt they had placed under wraps and had controlled. But the events of the past few days and leading up to this inauguration are letting us understand that it is not necessarily so, and that these things are still matters that over the next few years, the United States government and people have to spend a lot of time in addressing.
All right, let me put go ahead.
Speaking about... Yes,
let me just come in here. I find myself always heavily involved in political discussions, especially recently about America, and people wonder why we're discussing this, because America is like the signpost of democracy to the world. And having them have this level of instability worries the world and should worry us Nigerians. So I want us to help us personalize this story. You mentioned racism as something that looked like it had been dealt with, but it was just plastered on, and now they just removed it. It shows like there's a major decay. The wound wasn't healed at all. Same thing is happening similarly in Nigeria with marginalization, some region having no representation, and there's been bickering, but we are managing to keep Nigeria together as one and celebrating that Nigeria is one. When in actual fact, if someone blows the wind, what we will find out is really bad. How can we learn from America and not let this happen to Nigeria?
Well, first of all, the important thing is to know that you cannot sweep a matter under the carpet. If you do not address a matter sooner than later, it will erupt in a manner that you cannot control it. We've seen it happen in America. We find that the same thing will happen in Nigeria. Ultimately, if care is not taken, you can only suppress a situation, you can only suppress a people for only so long. Eventually, if you do not address the matter, it will erupt. The other thing we learned from America, and also which is useful for us to learn here, is that it is time we began to learn about the importance of what we say. There's a movement. I believe that the movement of nonviolent communication, for example, is something that we need to learn. Leaders ought to know whether you are an actual political leader or just one who has control of influence. You have to be careful of the kind of things that you say, the kind of things that you inspire, the kind of statements that appeal to people, because it is capable of bringing up reactions much more than you recognize, which is what culminated in the attack in January 6th in Capitol building. And in Nigeria, one of the things that we need to begin to say to ourselves is, can we cultivate a culture where we learn to speak principles, issues, facts, and figures, rather than abuse and accusations and language that incites? That is the one thing that I believe that we need to learn from. And when we have political campaigns, there's so much of abuse of people, of talking people down. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of abuse. We need to begin to move away from that, because if there's a lesson we learn, it's that language incites. When it incites, sometimes it is uncontrollable.
Right. All right, so a lot of Africans and Nigerians, most especially, were excited about Biden. Looking through what happened during Trump's administration, he withdrew from the World Health Organization. He halted the support of the UN, which carried out major of his funding programs in Africa, and also left the Paris Agreement. Now, there's this optimism that Biden will be different. In your opinion, do you think Biden will do more to foster the relationship between Nigeria and the US, and Africa and the US?
I believe it is reasonable to be optimistic, because even before you get to the arena of politics, you need to watch a person's antecedents. If there's one thing that has impressed me about Biden so far, is that he's very highly focused on what we call diversity and inclusion. He has a soft spot to deal with the underdog, to address the issues of the minority. I mean, if you look at his cabinet, he has a very high level of women, a high level of minorities. He's dealing with colors. So if that is the attitude he has, if he has a feeling that, yes, we need to involve everyone, everybody plays a part, I am optimistic that that view is going to affect even his world view of American politics and American international relations. He's going to think beyond just the American supremacy. He's going to be very sensitive to the needs of the rest of the world. He's certainly a person who strikes me as one who cares for everybody. All races, all sexes, all religions, all peoples. I believe he's inclusive.
All right, go ahead.
So Nigerians, we like to talk, and celebrate Nigerians abroad. And this administration already, with the cabinet established, has a lot of Nigerians, at least 2 major Nigerians. We have Adewale Adeyemo and Mosareme Okolo already going to be working with the president. How, is our excitement valid? And let's quickly talk also on the age of the president. In Nigeria here, we criticize our own for being too old, but then we have the American president now older. He's 77 or 78 now, and if he was going to run for a second time, it would be above 80. What implication does that have, for us? How does it affect us, or should we be bothered?
Okay, well, thank you for that. Well, first of all, let me speak about Nigerians. I'd like to say this. I'm excited as a Nigerian that Nigerians abroad are having a chance to show that we are not just a nation of scammers and 419ers. That image is very annoying, and I'm glad that at least opportunities like this show that Nigerians are excellent. The scammers are just an insignificant minority who are just getting an unfair share of publicity. But one thing I want to say to us in terms of the Nigerians being appointed in Biden's government, let's remember that they are naturalized Americans. Although they are originally Nigerians, they are now Americans. They have been appointed because they are Americans. They are not representing Nigeria in a direct sense, and I want Nigerians, therefore, to try to please manage their expectations and not expect them to begin to start acting as Nigerian ambassadors in the government. But yes, it's good to be proud of them. But let us please not put undue pressure on them. In their position there, they are Americans. They are serving an American government. So he did not appoint them as Nigerian ambassadors. You talk about age.
Okay.
I believe that age is a matter of how fit the person is mentally and intellectually. If a man at 100 is strong enough, good. A man at 44 may not be good enough. I believe that although the last president of the U.S. was even slightly younger than the incoming president, people were beginning to say things that were not so nice about us, about his intellectual state, about his mental state, and things like that. So it is not a matter of age. It's a matter of the individual. A person can be 85 and extremely fit intellectually and mentally, and he can be 35 and he can be off his rockers.
Okay, let me express my worry, and my worry is 73 million Americans voted for Trump. Trump is the first president in 150 years not to attend the inauguration. I mean, he clearly said he wasn't interested. I mean, these are unprecedented times for the U.S., and the question therefore is the cost really clear once Biden becomes president? Because there's a huge amount of Americans that seem to be against not just Biden, but the leftists. So how does this in any way translate to a better America, really, even after Biden becomes president? Because there's a huge number out there that's against the ruling party at this time. Are you there?
You know, I mentioned earlier that Yes, I'm there. You know, I mentioned earlier that the American problem that has to do with racial inequality has not been fully addressed. But I also want us to be a little careful about assuming that all of this is about those matters of race or racial inequality. Because, you see, when you look at the Trump presidency, you'll find that at the end of the day, he did do quite a few things. I listened to his farewell speech, and I said to my wife when we were both looking at it, I said, if this man had this kind of speech 4 times before the voting, he would have won the election. There are many Americans that have voted for him because for them, make America great again meant make America white again. No doubt about that. There are many persons for whom his era allowed a lot of whitish or racial things to be positive, but I don't think we should forget some of the positive things that he brought to the government, which people appreciated and for which a great number of those 70 plus million people voted for him. I'll tell you a few of them, for example. I personally believe that we don't give enough credit. We have not given enough credit to the fact last 4 years, ISIS has been a bit more quiet. Syria has been a little bit more quiet. There has been a little bit more, even our friend, the rocket man, has not tested as many missiles as it was in the early days of the Obama government. And you know, he has allowed people to understand that even America is not standing up to be what it is. Some people say he has abdicated American leadership. But the truth is, in very many ways, he has caused the world to sit up, if only for fear of the fact that this madman may release a nuclear bomb. But the truth is, a lot of persons all over the world that have been quick to draw bombs and do car bombs and things like that, there's been a lot less of that. ISIS has been quiet, Syria has been quiet, Northern Korea has been quiet, even Iran has been careful. And in terms of the state of America itself, religious expression has become freer. People can pray more openly now. People can talk about their religions. Even the Muslims that he seemed to hate have been able to express their religion a little bit more freely than before. People have been allowed to do what they want to do. So there are many things. During his time, there was a lot of the stock market went up in very many ways, even though a lot of the foundation of that had been laid from the time of Obama. But the truth is, Trump was not all that bad. What overshadowed the good he did was his personality.
Right. Okay, sir. So with everything that's happened in the U.S., what do you think it will take Nigeria to build a firm democracy, a strong institution, to give the people enough power to be able to reject bad governance without shedding blood? Hello,
I believe that one of the things that we need to face in Nigeria is that our governance structure is faulty. Year after year, we have run away from addressing it. The governance structure is faulty. The cost of governance is high. We cannot afford to continue the way we're going to go. And if we don't manage the breakdown, if we don't manage the restructuring, my fear, my daily nightmare is that it will erupt by itself. And people who do manage demolitions will tell you that you can manage a demolition in such a way that you can cause little collateral damage. But if you allow the building to explode on its own without control, the damage can be catastrophic. My concern with Nigeria is we need to start addressing our form of government, our cost of government, what qualifies people to be in government, and so on and so forth. That needs to be addressed. If we don't, it will blow up on us.
Let me take a few tweets before we run off. Yes, Nima.
So Professor Sakiboyewa says, those who think we are the worst in terms of our democracy should think twice. We have seen vote buying, stomach infrastructure, political thugs, violence and death played out in U.S. democracy, but kudos to them for having strong institutions. Professor Sakiboyewa continues and said Trump lost over 60 court cases because U.S. courts are independent. Department of Justice and other key institutions refuse to be used by the sitting president. This is what we need in Nigeria.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Akinsanyan. Thank you for joining us. It was such a pleasure having you on the show. We hope to have you soon again.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to coming again soon.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, that's all we can take on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow. Have a lovely day. Bye for now.